Subnautica 1 was a massively popular game. It sold millions of copies, they gained a giant audience, but unfortunately, they decided to be sold to Krafton, a really scummy publisher within this industry, and now apparently they are getting screwed over by them because this game has been delayed into 2026, just months before Krafton was due to pay out a $250 million bonus to the developers. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, this is an absolutely wild situation that has tons of twists and turns. We know that a lot of the leadership was actually ousted recently. There are people accusing Krafton of delaying this game so that they do not have to pay out bonuses, and it's pretty wild. So, just a week after gutting the leadership of Subnautica 2 studio Unknown Worlds, a Bloomberg report from Jason Schreier says Krafton is going to delay the game's early access release into 2026. The decision comes mere months before the PUBG publisher was slated to pay Unknown Worlds a $250 million bonus that developers say hinged on its release this year. Now, we know that their initial plan was to release it relatively soon, and then we had heard everything was going good, everything was smooth, the developers had confirmed that it would be releasing in 2025, and now that's not the case. So Krafton is not a very good company. Let me just say that. They are a company that has acquired a lot of entities. They're most known for PUBG, but at the same time, Subnautica's pretty big for them, Unknown Worlds is pretty big for them, and it seems that they are not really worried about respecting developers given this news. Now, of course, these are all just like rumors and reports, take them all with a grain of salt, but if this is true, that is extremely scummy behavior. So they acquired Unknown Worlds in 2021, 3 years after the hit release. Subnautica left early access and went into full release. The purchase agreement, according to Bloomberg, included the $250 million bonus payable if the studio achieved specific revenue targets by the end of 2025. With Subnautica 2 delayed into 2026, those targets cannot be met, and thus the bonus will not be paid, which is crazy. The leadership had reportedly planned to split the bonus with all of the studio's roughly 100 employees, payouts worth hundreds or thousands or even millions for some. Those leaders, Subnautica designer and director Charlie Cleveland, CEO Ted Gill, and the studio co-founder Max McGuire, were actually fired last week, which is not looking good for Krafton. And this has actually led to players rioting because they were so upset over this decision. The news prompted a backlash from fans, including a popular post calling for a boycott on the upcoming Subnautica 2 game on the PC gaming subreddit. We don't know what prompted the removal of these individuals, but it does seem very suspicious given the timing and all of the information we've gotten by now. And the ousted studio co-founder said that it was a shock to get fired. Subnautica 2 is ready for early access release and no longer working at the company I started. Things, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have sold it. I'm sorry to say you cannot complain when you get ousted from a company if you sell it. And that is what you did. You allowed Krafton to acquire you just a couple of years ago because you saw big numbers like the $250 million payout. You thought that you were going to be walking away with bank. It just goes to show that you didn't particularly care about ever really respecting your audience. Now, of course, I am saddened by this news, right, for these people because they are who made Subnautica popular. They are the ones who greenlit Subnautica and put their time and money into Subnautica. I feel bad for all of these developers who are now getting screwed over, but to give an update, Krafton actually did confirm that it was being delayed into 2026, saying the playtests provided some insight that there are a few areas where we needed to improve before launching the first version of Subnautica 2 to the world. Our community is at the heart of how we develop, so we want to give ourselves a little extra time to respond to more of that feedback before releasing the game into early access. And in a separate statement, Krafton said the new release date was not prompted by contractual obligations to the Subnautica 2 developer Unknown Worlds. This decision was was based solely on our commitment to quality and to delivering the best possible experience for players. It was not influenced by any contractual or financial considerations. Additionally, the decision had already been under discussion prior to recent leadership changes at the studio. Now, here is where we get into murky waters with what people's opinions on this is going to be, because on one hand, yes, it is good that they are delaying a game that they feel is not in a good state. I don't want companies to just be pumping out product needlessly, especially if you are going to release it extremely buggy and broken and not being worth the price tag. But on the flip side, this to me personally screams that they wanted out of this $250 million contractual obligation. Why the hell would they pay it out if they could just delay the game by a couple months? They are gaining free press by saying, oh, well, we just want to do what's best for players, and they also don't have to pay out that fat paycheck. Now, of course, on one hand, I do feel bad for the developers who are going through this, but on the flip side, this is just what's going to happen when you sell your company to another pretty scummy company. Now, is Krafton the worst by any means? No, they're like no Tencent, but on the flip side, you can't expect companies to do what's best for you as a customer or you as a developer. Companies at the end of the day care about getting paid, and they care about keeping as much money in their pockets as possible, and clearly that seems to be the reason why they ended up going through this. Now, of course, they're facing major problems with player backlash, because there are players who are calling for boycotts, but if that will actually happen, who the heck knows? On social media, though, there are a lot of people talking about this, and there are some individuals saying things like probably because they found out that the game was a woke mess and it would be a complete commercial failure. I know that the initial teaser did face some backlash. I didn't think that the game looked bad by any means, but on the flip side, it just seemed that they were going in a new direction, which people did question. One of the major red flags is actually their website. They talk about how they want to unite the world through play by making unique games with a globally represented team. And keep in mind that there are developers who worked on the first game who are working on the second game that I genuinely believe deserve kind of a payout. But you also have them going in this new modern direction. I think a big part of that is Krafton, and this is why I lost a lot of respect for the studio, because they decided to be sold to Krafton. They saw this big fat bonus and they figured, you know what, we're willing to sacrifice our creative freedom for a fat paycheck, and now they're prioritizing representation over gameplay because they're striving to create these inclusive experiences through diverse representation of characters, cultures, environments, and more. And maybe this game will still come out and be good, but my major problem here is the fact that this publisher feels that they can screw over the developers. I might not completely agree with the creative direction they've gone in with this sequel, but at the same time, there are people here who do not deserve to get screwed over. And if we allow a major company to rip away hundreds of millions of dollars from a studio just because they feel like it, because they don't want to pay it out, that means down the line, good developers could end up getting completely screwed over. Like this studio, or Krafton, this publisher, I should say, excuse me, ended up screwing over Callisto Protocol. That was a game that had a lot going for it, but it released way too early, but they pumped it out because they were looking for a few funds, and a really good game ended up being sacrificed in the name of a quick paycheck for this publisher. So while these developers are making some questionable decisions, we also have to point the blame at this publisher, and we really can't allow them to get away with this. Stop selling your IP to Asian mobile games publishers. I wouldn't trust any of them as far as I could throw them. Getting fired while in space is not a story many people can say they've experienced. Yeah, it is very similar to how NCSoft fired Richard Garriott while he was in space to avoid paying out shares, and he actually sued later and won, but we don't know what is going to happen here. Krafton is a very big entity, keep that in mind. Still not enough. They are putting some extra empowered Marxist black lesbians in it. Why did it always come down to greed and shadiness with these larger companies? Because of course they want to protect their bottom line. They don't actually care about players. They don't actually care about their developers. They care about making money. That's why the statement that the lobbyist group made about Stop Killing Games is so funny, because they're saying, oh, well, if developers can't make live service games, you're restricting their freedoms, their creative freedoms. No, we're not, because companies are the ones who are ultimately deciding if something goes live as a service or not. I've said it multiple times now. I don't like Dragon Age of Veilguard, but the developers said they, meaning EA, wanted them to shift it to live service, and they started to do that, and then they turned back after seeing how many live service games had failed. But the developers didn't want to do that in the freaking first place. I might not like the game, I might not like those devs, but don't say that developers are going to gain more creative freedom when that definitely isn't the case. So I'll be keeping my eye on this Subnautica situation. It seems really, really bad right now, though, for the studio and also for the people who are a part of this situation. Of course, I don't claim to know all of the information. Maybe there were genuinely reasons to delay this experience, but to me, as an outsider looking in, it appears that Krafton absolutely fucked over the people that were a part of the studio, and they found a way to not have to pay out a $250 million bonus to this studio. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.